In this video, we're going to be looking at the rush family. If you recall, that was the Juncaceae that's here. We're going to be using the Flora of North America key. If you'll recall in if you've seen it, in one of the other videos I have given an overview of the grasses, sedges, and rushes, and how one would work through the key to determine that you indeed do have a rush, that you're going to be in the Juncaceae. So I'm not going through all of that here. We're just going to assume that we've gone through and we've determined that we have a rush, either with a key or we just looked at it and we thought, oh, okay, I'm pretty comfortable this is a rush. Before I do that, before we actually get into the key and start working through this, what I want to do is kind of an overview in this video of what the fruit looked like in this particular among these three families. So looking at grass fruit, sedge fruit, and the fruit of rush. Just kind of recap. If you've seen the other videos, give a recap. If you haven't seen them, but just to show you here a visual comparison of the fruits of from the three different families, and we're just going to we have one representative that I've used in these from each of the family that either have been or will have been used in these videos for working through to identify a specimen. All right, so I have over here's a grass. All right. So this is a grass. This is the one that we identified as Brachyarea, or I think it was Eurocloa is the more, I guess, the more up-to-date name. And so, we have here there are 3 florets. Okay, and if you'll recall, each floret consisted of, there were 2 glooms. And so looking at this, and it turns out in looking through the grass key in the Flora of North America, or Inflorescence, it turns out that there's a tiny gloom on this side. At least when these things are mature, there will be a gloom over here, and then there's one on the back side that in the video where we actually worked through a grass key, we found that gloom on the back side. And then what we're looking at here is a lemma. So if you'll recall, in the grasses, we would have a gloom, and then a lemma, and then a palea. Sometimes one or more of those things are missing in a particular species of grass, and so it's an important thing to recognize and be on the lookout for when you're working through an identification key to try to determine the specific identity of a grass. But at any rate, so this is from a flowering spike from a grass from that, I think broadleaf signal grass was the common name of this one. And then slide this over a little bit, and here we have a spike. This is a pistillate spike. So would produce the female parts from, recall we keyed this out to Carex oriolensis. Again, here we have within each one of these sacs, the sacs are called perigenia. Inside there is an achene in each one of these. And then up here we have the scales, and above each one of these scales there would have been one of these perigenia attached. And so these were the pistillate scales with the perigenia inside, nested above, sort of inside them. And then in the background here, which we did not see when we did that sedge identification, I'll focus this. So this is the staminate spike. So this is the one that would have produced the pollen. And so this thing actually sat up above on the culm, up above where the pistillate spikes kind of branched off and hung down, and then this was up at the top of that culm. And then, of course, today we're going to be looking at rushes, and so over here we have a rush. And so this is a cluster of fruit from one of the rushes that we'll be identifying today. And so you can see the fruit here. And depending on your expertise and how often you've looked at these sorts of things, I mean, maybe you might look at that and go, I don't know, it's just like the others. I hope that's not the case. But what you have here is you have inside this, there's a capsule, and you can see here on this one the capsule has opened up. So you have a front piece or partition or part of the outside covering of that capsule, and then there's one off to the side, and then there's another one around in the back there. So it was a 3-parted capsule, and then inside here there would have been a lot of seeds. And unfortunately, this one we did not have any seeds. I wasn't able to find. I knocked around on it with a ruler. I wasn't able to find any seeds at all. But you have a capsule, and then on the outside of it, these lighter colored, sort of almost triangular structures. There are 6 of those. So there are 3 where we would have had, I guess 3 where we would have had the petals, and then another 3 where we would have had the sepals. And so all of those structures together form what we call in Juncus, or in the Juncaceae, we call that the perianth. The perianth. All right. And so a lot of times they'll talk about perianth bristles or something like that when you're working through the key for these things. And then just to sort of see the fruit from all 3 of these side by side, here we have on the left, we have that floret from a grass. And again, the caryopsis, the actual fruit itself, is inside here. But that's a floret from a grass. This is the perigenium and the pistillate scale from the sedge that we looked at. So this was from Brachiaria or Uricloa. This was from the carex. And then over here is, or are, a couple of capsules from a species of Juncus from the rush family, the Juncaceae. All right, so there's a little overview of these 3 families, what the fruit look like, the sorts of things that you're looking for when you try to identify a species, a specimen from one of these 3 families. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be working with the Juncaceae, with the rush family, and move these things out of the way because we're done with them for right now. So we're going to be working with the Juncus family. All right, right off the bat. So we look through here and we see 9 genera total in the family in North America. In the region of the Flora of North America, there are only 2 genera. You see those right here. One is Juncus, and one is Luzula. All right. The way you distinguish between the 2 of these is, as I mentioned, with that Juncus capsule, that inside there would have been a whole bunch of seeds inside there. If it had been Luzula, there would have only been 3. So the capsule is kind of in 3 parts. There would have been a seed in each part. 3 seeds would have been Luzula. Okay, so the ones that we have today, and I have 3 species here. It's actually relatively fast to work through these because they don't have all of the same sorts of parts that you have to deal with and explore for with the grasses. A little bit simpler than the sedges, and there aren't quite as many species to deal with. Even though up here it says 1,108 species in North America in this family, but not in the genus Juncus. So that's what we're going to be working with. So all of them would have had multiple seeds, more than 3 seeds in the capsule. So we go ahead and click on Juncus. And so we come over to the genus Juncus. And you can see here in Juncus, there's something like 100 species in North America. Only about 300 species in the world. So about 100 species, and we're going to, again, have a key to go through. And this one, much like the key for the carex that we did, if you've seen that video, the key for the carex had it broken into, there I believe it went to sections. So you had the whole genus, and then it broke the genus up into there were multiple keys that you go to from there, and then each of those keys would send you to a section, and then in that section you would work through to determine the species that you have. All right, so let's grab one of these. All right, I collected all of these at the Trim Cane Wildlife Management Area near Starkville here, and pull this first one out of the bag. And I looked at that and I thought, well, there's some pieces missing because here's the rest of it. All right, we'll put this over here so it'll be a little bit more obvious. So each one of these things is a cluster. And in the key, they refer to them as a head. So it's a cluster of capsules. So each one of these things is a cluster of multiple capsules. And this is a rush, Juncus, in the genus Juncus, because there would have been, in each one of those capsules, there would have been multiple seeds inside there. And in fact, this one, I actually was able to find some seeds, and we're going to look at those because that's actually part of the identification here is some information about the seed. Well, we haven't gotten to that part of the key yet. Okay, so the flowers. So we start up here, step number one. Okay, flowers born singly. Okay, so that means if you don't have the flowers, you're going to have capsules. So those capsules, are they by themselves? Or are they in heads? All right, well, kind of ruined that one because I already told you they're in heads. So the flowers are in heads. So we're going to go to this part 4. So we come down here. Are the leaves flat or are the leaves compressed or terete, round or compressed? And so it turns out we're kind of lucky on this. We have some leaves and they are very much compressed. Not only are they compressed, but when you run your finger down there, you can feel inside there are some little cross partitions in there. So there's some diaphragms inside there that you can feel, and at the right angle, you can actually see those partitions when you look at this thing. So it looks like something that could have been round at some point, except that it's not. It's flat. So it's flattened out. It's terete, or not terete. It's flattened out. It's compressed. Okay, so where were we? So leaves terete or compressed. They are compressed. So we go to number 6. The capsule is large. Okay, I mean, I don't know if you only had one. All right, how do you know if it's large or small? Anyway, capsule is large, seeds large with long tails. The leaves not noticeably septate. Okay, remember I just said you can kind of see it. You can definitely feel it. So capsules are smaller, the seeds are not tailed, or if they are tailed, the tails are not long, and the leaves are septate, okay, or not. Okay, up here they're definitely not. Down here they could be or not. So we know that the leaves are septate. Let's look at the seeds for a second here. All right, so here are some seeds. I'll focus that in, and let me move some of these to the middle, zoom in on these a little bit, and there we go. It's not the best lighting on that necessarily. But I hope what you notice here is that these seeds are more or less round. And in fact, when I was getting the seeds out of the capsules, I had shaken them out and I was using a hand lens, so one of these things here, to look around on the paper, see if I could find the seeds. And whenever I moved the paper, the seeds just rolled across there. And so because the seeds rolled and then all of the debris I had didn't roll, I was actually able to kind of fold up the paper and get all of the seeds into one place on the paper. So they're kind of round and there are no tails. So if they had tails, there would be on one or both ends, there would be this obvious long kind of tail-like structure sticking off of the seed. And we don't have that here. So let's see, where were we? We went down to 6. All right, so capsules large, seeds large, long tailed. They're not. Their seeds are not tailed, and the leaves were septate. So we're going to go to number 7. All right, leaves not septate. We just said they are. Plants halophytic. So halophytic means plants that grow in salt water. These were not in salt water. Leaves septate, plants usually of freshwater habitats. Boom. Okay, that's what it is. And so it's in the subgenus. So here they have them broken into genus, broken into subgenera. Septati. Okay, well, it's septate leaves. That kind of makes sense. So let's go over to Septati. All right, so we come over here, and it says seeds tailed. They don't have tails. Okay, seeds not tailed. The seed body clear yellow-brown. That's what they look like. And that's kind of a yellow-brown. It looks more yellow-brown actually looking at it with a hand lens than on this microscope. So we go to number 7. So down here, number 7, scroll that up a little bit. The flowers, 1 to 2, maybe sometimes 4 at each node. All right, I counted in a hand lens, I zoomed in. On one side, I think I counted 20 maybe in one of these things. So that one would have had about 40. Flowers in heads of 3 to 60. Okay. Capsule is fertile throughout or only below the middle. Okay, well that really doesn't matter in this case. Flowers in heads of 3 to 60. All right. I mean, and it looks like all of them, and I looked like the capsules had already opened. So I take it from that they were fertile, they opened up, and in fact, I'll stick one of these under the microscope in a minute because they're really long, skinny, and at the top where they open, they really kind of flare out like this. That's also important in the key in a minute. So all of them I saw were fertile. They're definitely in heads of 3 to 60. It takes us to step number 9. Okay. Heads spheric or nearly spheric versus obconic to hemispheric, and mostly like in a complete round head instead of just being a half one. But then also 15 to 60 flowered. All right, let's go. We come down to number 10, and then here's where it gets a little bit difficult. All right, does it have 6 stamens or does it have 3 stamens? All right, well, I looked ahead. I admit, I looked ahead. And this number 18, if you go in there and you look, and it's a bunch of stuff that is absolutely not this. Okay, so stamens 3. And that's one of the difficulties. You may not always, if you catch it when you have the stamens, well, you may not have the seeds. Catch it when the seeds, you may not have the stamens. So sometimes you have to, take multiple routes and figure out which one it's not. In this case, it apparently has 3 stamens because none of these, when you go to number 18, worked at all for this species. So we come to 11. All right, plants cespitose. The tepals lanceolate, or they could be lance subulate. It's kind of pretty similar. The cespitose is it growing in a big clump? So a bunch of culms coming out of one relatively tight, compact clump, or was it rhizomatous? All right, so, well, these have kind of broken apart. Well, there you go. You can, well, I don't know, again, how well you can necessarily see. But here's the base of this culm, and then it comes over a little bit, and here's another one. This other one, so I dug these both up together, and they were about that far apart. They were kind of spaced out. They were not in a tight clump. I think where I dug these two, there were maybe 2, maybe 3 other ones in kind of an area this big, so it wasn't really compacted in there. So it's more like the rhizomatous thing. Okay, so we come down to number 12. Capsules included. Capsules included. Capsules not included. What does that mean? Well, let's look at the next one. Capsule exerted to slightly included. Exerted means does the capsule stick out past those tepals? In this case, it does. So I'll tell you what. I am going to pop one of these things off of here, and I take it off instead of trying to finagle this whole thing around because it's a little bit difficult. But I'll put this under the microscope, and then maybe this will work out so we can see it. Slide that over a little bit. Zoom out. Okay, there we go. That's pretty awesome right there. Okay, so if we go over, trying to find a good one. It was much easier with the hand lens because you can go around to where you want to be. Let's see, okay, there's one right there. So here's one over here on this side. So you can see the capsule came out, and here's where one side of it sort of flared out. There's another one up there that's opened up a little bit. But what I wanted to point out, I lost my focus for some reason. What I wanted to point out is the capsule comes way out here, and those the perianth or tepals only come to about here. So the capsule sticks way out beyond, and when it opens, these capsule parts really flare out quite a bit. That's also going to be important in a minute. But capsule sticks well out beyond the tepals. So was it here? Capsule exerted. So it is exerted. It sticks out. So number 13, capsules remaining united at the apex after dehiscence, or do the valves separate at the apex, which is what they do on this one. So I was just pointing that out. So we come down to 16. So down to 16, all right, and so where it gets a little bit confusing. So either the tepals are 4 to 5 millimeters long, the leaves laterally compressed, which is what we have, or the tepals are 3 to 4 millimeters and the leaves are terete. Now, the tepals that I measured were all right around 3 millimeters long, which would suggest this, but the leaves were laterally compressed, which would suggest this. And then it turns out if if you come down here to number 17 and you get these two options down here, it's not one of these two species. So in fact, what we had was this validus. Look at the distribution map on this. It's all in the southeastern United States. Mississippi is square in that distribution there. And then Juncus validus, I pulled up a picture of this. So this is from southeasternflora.com. My good friend Dr. Charles Bryson is associated with this website. It's an amazing tool. And hopefully you can kind of tell. So we have that. Of course, this one under the microscope is not green. Well, it's not all green. Part of it's green. You can kind of tell that it looks pretty similar to that. And again, here, oh, there's me. Here, here are some of these heads that are kind of down in one of those axillary branches. There's some out at the tips and whatnot, doing basically the thing that one in the picture there is doing. All right. So it looks like this one was. Looks like this one was Juncus validus, and then over here they actually even wanted to call this Juncus validus variety validus. So they even separate validus into different varieties, and it looks like we had variety validus. All right. So that was much faster than a grass or the carex that we did. Kind of cool. Let's go back. So we go back to the beginning of Juncus here. Back to the beginning of Juncus. And we'll do one more here. We're going to do one that, give it away, one of my favorites. Yeah, I have a lot of favorite plants, but this one I really like because we go back a long ways. I worked with this when I was an undergrad. I actually did research on this particular species. Now some people probably are already, oh, I know what it is. So here are some of the culms of this thing. They're long, they're kind of sharp on the end. This one and I, at one point, had an issue where I was working with it, and every once in a while, it would stab me in the face or in the neck or something, and I would break out. I would have these big hives where it did that. I still love it. We stayed together all the way through undergrad, finished my undergrad working with it, and then studied it all the way through grad school, even though it tried to make me allergic and maybe it wasn't trying to kill me. Maybe it was just giving me kisses. I don't know. Anyway, so flowers borne singly or in heads. All right, so I'll pull out a little inflorescence here. If I can pull out just one, it's going to be helpful. They're in a cluster. They're in a cluster because when I was collecting these, it turned out that the clump of plants I was collecting them from had apparently a pretty large wasp nest in it. And so the wasps didn't like me cutting off parts of the plant they lived in, and they all started, I was in there cutting these things off, and I hear this noise. It sounded like water kind of pouring through a big pipe or something. And so at first, because I was in an artificial impoundment, so there was a levee, and so at first I thought, oh, that's just water running through the culvert. And then I happened to think, wait, there was no water there where I was. There was no water, there was no culvert. So I looked up to see some number. I don't know how many. I didn't take time to count them. A whole bunch of wasps kind of coming up out of this clump of Juncus. And I held on to, I had all of these flowers I'd been picking, and I just kind of wadded them up in my hand and took off running. I didn't get stung, but I did kind of make a mess with these things, and they're hard to get out of the bag. But let's see if I can get this. Find a piece of paper over here. Sorry. Here we go. Where did he go? Here he is. All right, so there's what it looks like. Now, first, you might look at that and go, oh, they're in heads. Well, what they are, they're in these clusters. They're in bouquets. It's a natural bouquet of flowers. But within each of these bouquets of flowers, show you over here under the microscope, they're individually at the ends of these little stalks within there. Okay, and so this one looks a lot different than the other one we just looked at. So here the capsules are kind of roundish, and the perianth bristles are just a tiny bit longer than the capsules. So it's kind of roundish, maybe a little bit sort of oblong, elliptical, and these bristles are long and skinny, and they stick out just a little bit past the capsule. Anyway, so in heads, no, they're not in heads. They're born singly, and bracteoles, whatever. So number 2, inflorescence is appearing lateral. So that is, do they look like they come out? Ooh, I broke it. Do they look like they come out the side? Oh, this stuff really is going to get everywhere. Do they look like they come out the side of the stem? Okay. Man, I'm really not good at doing this. There. Okay. And it does. It looks like it's coming out kind of at a 45-degree angle coming out of the stem, and I accidentally broke this thing, but this was part of the stem, and so it continued on. It goes on past where the inflorescence comes out the side of it. So it does actually, it appears, where was that? The inflorescence, it does appear to be lateral. The bract, so that part that goes on up, is terete. It's kind of round, it's erect. It appears as though a continuation of the stem. So really none of the rest of the stuff really matters. So Juncus, the genus, the subgenus Genuini. This is a genuine Juncus, except no imitations. All right, so Juncus subgenus Genuini, I don't know, genuine Juncus. What are we going to do with this? Now look at this. This is pretty cool. So we have 11 species in here. That would be cool, even if I didn't already know what this was. That would be cool. Wouldn't be that difficult. Flowers 1 to 3, and the seeds tailed. Bad news, I do not see any seeds. So this thing, normally it's throwing out seeds in maybe May, definitely in June, July, throwing those seeds out. Now we're in September. Did not see any seeds, so I'm thinking this thing must have already dumped all of them. Probably as I'm saying that, I'm finding seeds down here. But anyway, but I will tell you the seeds for the species do not have tails. And I also will tell you, as you just saw, there are more than 5 flowers on the stalk here. Okay, so more than 5 flowers. We go to number 4. Come down to 4. Culms well spaced along a sparingly branched creeping rhizome. Culms tufted on short, densely branching rhizomes. So I actually thought ahead on this one, and I brought part of the rhizome. As per usual, I'm going to have plant parts everywhere. But, all right, so zoom in this, and it's upside down, right? So if the root's at the top up there, but you have multiple culms, multiple stems, down, 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 and they're tiny little short branches of rhizome in between those. Turn it over the right way so you can see what this looks like. It's a really pretty plant. Everything about this plant is pretty, Dr. Irvin thinks. Okay, so there you can kind of see what it looks like where these things come out of the ground, where the culms come off of that rhizome there. A whole bunch of them, little bitty tiny short. The rhizomes are like a millimeter to maybe sometimes a few millimeters in length. So little short rhizomes that the culms pop out of there, which means that this is going to grow in a pretty compact cespitous clump, which it does. Thousands of them in one. If it's been there for a while and keeps putting them up, it'll put up, I think 4 or 5 sets of these per year. They just keep coming up, and they're all growing in that one tight location. So culms tufted on short, densely branching rhizomes. We come to number 8, and we come down to number 8, and stamens. Does it have 3 or does it have 6? Wow, shoot, 3 or 6. All right. Well, I'll tell you, it has 3. But if we come down, let's say, oh, okay, well, maybe it's this one, Juncus gymnocarpus, and you look at the distribution map, barely occurs anywhere. So it's not a widespread species. Juncus patens, you see there, it's West Coast only. I was in Mississippi. So it's neither one of these. So it's not 6. It's 3 stamens. It's Juncus effusus. Okay, that is who we have here. Juncus effusus, soft rush. This is a circumpolar species. It's throughout the northern hemisphere. Of course, it's a weed in some places. People in the UK have issues with it in pastures for sheep and things like that. It can be a weed in some places. It's still beautiful. I love the plant. But anyway, this is it. Look at the distribution map for Juncus effusus. It's basically, any place that's wet, you can find Juncus effusus growing. An illustration of it here. And so which one of these are Juncus effusus? It's going to be 5 through 8. So 5, 6, 7, and 8. There's what the seed looks like. And here's that rhizome. See how they're very short rhizome segments with the culms coming off. It has these were kind of chestnut, brownish, kind of red color, little leaf sheaths down here at the bottom. And then there's what that capsule looked like. It was kind of a little bit round, a little elliptical, with these bristles that were just barely tiny, a little bit longer than the capsule. So this is it, Juncus effusus. The Juncus family. So these keys, pretty easy. You just clip right through them. That didn't take long at all to go through that. Much faster than when we were trying to work through the especially the grasses, even the sedges, although they weren't terribly difficult. But the Juncus family, even with 100 species in North America in this genus, it's not too bad. And I've keyed out some of the Luzula, and they weren't terribly difficult. But I did send those off to somebody who knew a little bit more about them, a lot more about them than I did, to get confirmation on the identifications on those. But that's the Juncus family. And then at the beginning of the video here, we saw a comparison of the grass, the sedge, and the rush fruit. And so you've seen all of those. There's some videos going through identifying a grass, identifying I think 2 different sedges, and then here we have a couple of rushes from the Juncaceae from the genus Juncus. Juncus effusus, and then I think it was Juncus vallis. Oh, before I go completely away here, we can pop over here again from Southeastern Flora, and hopefully you'll agree that those look really similar. So this is Juncus effusus, the page, and Southeastern Flora has just a ton of photos of all these different species. And you see this down here. Those pictures look a lot like what we just saw with this Juncus effusus specimen here. All right, so that's the Juncus family, the last of these 3 families, the grasses, sedges, and rushes. Hope it's been fun. Definitely I've had fun making these videos, and I'm glad that we were able to finish not only with the rush family, but with one of my favorite species, Juncus effusus.